The tale begins with Ichinos, who had a rough start in his early years. His friend Hanabi bullied him for as long as he could remember, turning insults into casual observations that he somehow just accepted. Even landing in a medical facility from stress didn't make her ease up. She sat by his bedside, calling him worthless and a failure of a significant other, yet she still refused to break up with him. "You're too nice," she claimed, "and I'm not about to waste a perfectly good doormat." That's when Ichinose snapped. He told her they should end the relationship. Hanabi was floored. Her mind briefly shut down. It wasn't always this bad, or maybe it was, and Ichinose was just slow to catch on. In the past, he had been playing in the sand and minding his own business when Hanabi wandered over and asked if he was making an elephant. He replied that he was, and then she just stared at him. No expression, just staring. It was unsettling. Everyone thought she was super nice, so she kept playing with him, and he began to wonder if he was the weird one. He even apologized, though he wasn't sure why. That pretty much set the tone for the rest of his life. Hanabi would throw insults at him, and he'd just take it. She made him take notes for it and forced him to be her significant other, and if he didn't text her back quickly enough, he'd be called inconsiderate, heartless, and probably responsible for global warming too. Then came the high school years, also known as Hannah's tyranny era. One day she texted him, ordering him to meet her and her friends at the station. His stomach was already churning, and he thought about bailing, but he knew how that would end. So like a man with no survival instincts, he grabbed his umbrella and went. She texted again. "Be there in 5 minutes." He pointed out it was raining, which turned out to be a huge mistake. She hit him with the guilt trip of the century, making it sound like he was personally trying to give her pneumonia. Of course, she added the classic, "No one else cares about you, Saratane," for good measure. So off he went, running through the downpour like a protagonist in a tragic love story. Except way less cool. When he arrived expecting some grand emergency, he found her eating with her friends indoors. He texted to say he'd arrived, but she just told him he took too long and had to wait outside in the rain. And wait he did. For an hour. Turns out he wasn't just standing there like an idiot. He was a part of a bet. Hanabi and her friends had been gambling on whether or not he'd actually wait that long. Spoiler. He did. When she finally came out, she laughed at how waterlogged he was, comparing his hair to a wet mop, as if it were all just a fun joke. In front of everyone, she casually declared that he'd do anything she said. For the first time, he felt his stomach drop. He realized he should have left ages ago, maybe even years ago. When he finally told her they were done, she short-circuited again. Fast forward to the medical facility, and there she was, still in shock. She climbed onto his bed, acting like he had no right to end the relationship. "Breaking up with me! That's not how this works!" she exclaimed, going full dramatic mode, claiming no one else would ever date a loser like him. Maybe she was right, but for the first time in his life, Ichinose truly didn't care. Whether he ended up alone forever or not, one thing was certain. He was finally unshackled. Hanabi was pushed out of his clinic room as Ichinose asked her if she was happy now that she was rid of her ineffectual significant other. He shut the door behind her. Hannah pounded on the door, demanding an apology. A nurse came over and told her to quiet down because it was a medical facility. Hanabi apologized, saying they had a fight and it was her fault for losing her temper when Ichinose got sick. She said she was leaving now and bowed an apology for causing a scene. As she walked away, she thought about how socialites with good looks are always in high demand. She texted Ichinose, saying she was getting irritated and that he should apologize to her. She tried to manipulate him again, saying he had no other friends. She even scolded him for reading her messages. But this time he blocked her, realizing she twisted everything to make herself a victim. Back in his clinic bed, Ichinose remembered how Hanabi used to bully him about his looks when they were kids. She'd asked if he had ever looked in a mirror, saying that if she had a face like his, she'd never show it to anyone because people would make fun of her. She suggested he grow his hair out to cover his face. Ichinose lay in bed, thinking about how all of Hannah's words had crushed his self-esteem. Because of her, he had never understood his own worth. But now, he decided to cut his hair after leaving the medical facility. That night, he fell asleep, finally liberated. After 13 years, his toxic relationship with Hanabi was officially over. When he returned to school, the reaction was instant. The girls went crazy. Ichinose looks amazing, and no one even recognizes him at first. They think he's a new student. Girls gush over his silky hair and sharp eyes, calling him their type. Overwhelmed by all the attention, Ichinose doesn't know how to react. His friend Haruta laughs and tells him people are talking about him. It's the first time in his life that someone has ever told him he looks good. Haruta points out that Ichino's used to have bangs that covered his face, and now that it's visible, he looks like a completely different person. They tell him he looks much better without the bangs, and that they never imagined their class had such a handsome guy. Haruta asks why he decided to change his look now. Ichinose jokes that he just felt like switching things up. Haruta compliments him, saying he looks much better this way, and Ichinose thanks him, feeling genuinely happy. Then he notices 3 girls crying while looking at him, which confuses him. Haruta laughs and tells him there's still a lot he needs to learn. Ichinose apologizes for making the class atmosphere weird by shutting himself off for so long. He expresses that he wants to talk more with people and hopes to get along with everyone. The class is happy to hear this, and they're excited that the serious guy with bangs turns out to be attractive after all. Later at lunch, they all sit together. Haruta admits that he never imagined Ichinose could hold a normal conversation, saying that if they had known, they would have hung out with him sooner. Ichinose apologizes again for being so withdrawn, and says he's happy to be talking with them now. Haruta tells him he's kind and good-looking. Ichinose just smiles, saying his personality and appearance are nothing special. But that smile drives the girls crazy. Haruta laughs, calling his looks a natural treasure, and warns him not to smile too much or he'll cause chaos. Ichinose finds it funny and laughs, making the girls swoon even more. Suddenly an angry Hanabi shows up. Ichinose recognizes that she's really mad. He doesn't care whether it's because he ignored her or because they broke up. It's no longer his problem. He tries to walk away, but she blocks him. He remembers how Hanabi used to smugly say that since she was the prettiest girl in school, it would be a scandal if people found out they were dating. She thought she was way out of his league and didn't want anyone questioning her taste, so she made him promise not to tell anyone. Haruta asks Ichinose if he knows her, and he just says he's never seen her before, then walks away. Hanabi storms off, furious at being completely rejected. Ichinose finishes his math work early and realizes he has 15 minutes to spare. His mind briefly drifts to his last run-in with Hanabi. She's probably still fuming somewhere, but honestly, he doesn't care. As he looks around pondering how to kill time, he notices a girl with glasses sitting nearby reading a book. A sudden gust of wind blows something out of her book, and without thinking, Ichinose picks it up and hands it back to her. She thanks him and he casually says, "No problem." But she looks a little surprised, and that's when it hits him. This is the first time they've ever spoken. Hanabi used to drill into his head that no girl would ever like him. She'd say she was only dating him out of pity, as if she was doing him a huge favor. Because of her, Ichinose never really learned how to talk to girls on his own. He always thought he would just make things awkward, so he avoided it altogether for years. Hanabi was pretty much the only girl he talked to, and even those conversations were more like one-sided lectures. Now, standing there, Ichinose admits to the girl that he's never really tried making friends before, and apologizes if he made her uncomfortable. To his surprise, she blushes and reassures him that everything's fine. She even introduces herself, hoping they can get along. Ichinose already knows who she is, and when he says so, she smiles, happy that they finally talked. Later, Yukishiro teases him about how everyone has been fawning over him since he cut his hair. Ichinose just shrugs it off, saying people will get over it soon enough, like they do with anything rare. Yukishiro laughs and calls him funny. Talking to her feels so different from talking to Hanabi. With Yukishiro, he doesn't have to overthink everything or worry about saying the wrong thing. He can just be himself, which is a nice change of pace. She mentions how she always wanted to talk to him because she noticed him taking care of the flowers and watering the plants after school. She thought he seemed like a kind person. Ichinose brushes it off, saying he was just killing time while waiting for Hanabi and that he's not as kind as she thinks. Yukishiro laughs and hands him her book, joking that he's going to be super popular now. Later, Ichinose heads to an arcade, tries his luck at a claw machine, and fails miserably. Instead, he decides to buy some food. Everywhere he goes, girls seem to flock to him, which still feels pretty surreal. He sits down to eat and realizes that now that he's broken up with Hanabi, he doesn't have to deal with her unceasing messages anymore. No more scolding for not replying quickly enough. Still, his heart races every time his phone rings. Old habits die hard, I guess. But he tells himself it will fade with time. She's never going to text him again. On the train ride home, he reflects on his day and realizes it was actually fun. School, the conversations with Yukishiro, hanging out with his classmates. It all felt important. He used to avoid people because of the things Hanabi drilled into his head, but now he feels ready to change. For the first time in years, he decides he wants to make as many friends as possible. As he walks home, he spots Hanabi on her phone. The moment she notices him, she quickly hides it behind her back and greets him as if nothing has changed. She starts complaining about how long he took, frustrated that she had to wait 2 whole hours for him. She reminds him, as if he forgot, that she taught him to take a different route whenever he wanted. Now she demands to know what he was thinking when he decided to break her rule. Ichinose doesn't respond and tries to walk past her, but she blocks his way. She can't believe he's ignoring her. Frustrated, he finally acknowledges her, but only to ask what she wants. She raises her voice, angry about how long she waited for him. It's just another attempt to guilt trip him, something she always did to force an apology from him. Without warning, her frustration shifts to his classmates. She rants about them, somehow tying it back to how they abandoned him, acting as if Ichinose should have predicted her reaction, like he's responsible for how she feels. Annoyed, he questions whether she seriously wasted 2 hours just to say all this. His indifference only makes her angrier, but he doesn't care. He states one final time that they're strangers now, and that her behavior is just irritating. Ichinose confirms that he's really breaking up with her, which makes Hanabi visibly upset. She warns him that his life won't be good without her, but he doesn't waver. He tells her that when they were together, he was in a miserable state. Frustrated, Hanabi grabs his arm and calls him a fool for getting carried away just because he had fun for a single day. She insists that this is his worst side, claiming that the people drawn to him only for his looks are worthless and that he's too blind to see it. Then she demands to know how he plans to live without her, reminding him that there's no one else he can talk to like this. But Ichinose disagrees. The classmates he spent the whole day with weren't anything like how Hanabi described. She doesn't have the power to decide who he spends time with anymore because between them, it's over. Hanabi snaps, saying he's incapable of doing things on his own and always needs someone to guide him. She demands that he apologize, claiming that his cold attitude frustrates her. She's used to it, she says, and even claims that it takes a big heart to forgive him, telling him to apologize properly. But the more she talks, the stronger Ichinose's resolve becomes. He refuses, making it clear that he doesn't need her in his life. Hanabi is astonished and gets angry, insisting that she's the one who wants to end the relationship. But Ichinose points out that they're already done, so it doesn't even matter. She shouts that she doesn't approve of this, but Ichinose is tired of the back and forth. He reminds her that she was always the one who talked about breaking up. Now that it's finally happening, he's had enough. He shoves her aside and tells her to leave. Hanabi storms off in one direction while Ichinose walks the other way. He sighs in relief, thinking she's finally accepted that it's over. Days pass since their last conversation at the park, and Ichinose enjoys the peace his life has brought him. Although life has been calm, he still sees Hanabi after school. Even when he ignores her, she always seems to appear in front of him. At first he thinks it's good she's not talking to him, but then he remembers all the time she made him wait in front of her house for random reasons. Fixing her hair, watching a TV show she liked, anything to keep him standing there. Now he arrives at the station earlier than usual and suddenly realizes that she might have been making him wait on purpose. That's when he notices her with a second-year student, the star of the track team. From the way they interact, it looks like they're dating. The guy playfully asks Hanabi how much she loves him using a sweet voice. She replies that she loves him more, teasing that he sounds like he's comparing her to someone. Hanabi then jokes that she'll cast a spell on him, ensuring that he only thinks about her. He calls her cute and promises to never look at another girl for the rest of his life. Ichinose, watching from a distance, thinks that the guy should look at other people. He decides that tomorrow he'll take an earlier train to avoid running into them. 2 days later, despite his plan, Ichinose ends up seeing them on the train. He wonders why they weren't there yesterday when he tried to avoid them. It's starting to feel too intentional to be a coincidence. He begins to suspect that Hannah wants him to see her with her new significant other, as if she's trying to prove a point. Ichinose shrugs it off, pretending not to care, which only makes Hanabi even more annoyed. The next day, he greets his classmates as usual, but for some reason, he feels drained, probably because of what he saw yesterday. He reminds himself to shake it off and wake up properly. The first period is PE, and Ichinose isn't thrilled about it. The gym teacher announces that they'll be deciding the relay race order for the upcoming sports festival. The boys get hyped, knowing that the fastest runner will be the anchor and the second fastest will take the second spot. Apparently being in one of those positions makes you popular with the girls, so everyone is suddenly very motivated. Seeing everyone so fired up, Ichinose realizes just how competitive they are. He's never really tested his own speed, because every year he just aimed for an average performance. He doesn't even know how fast he actually is. The only time he ever tried running seriously was in kindergarten when he won first place in a race and received a sticker as a prize. However, that moment didn't last long. Hanabi immediately ripped the sticker off him, saying she didn't like how he looked when he ran. Apparently he was too fast, like some kind of racehorse, and that wasn't cool. Ever since then, Ichinos has made a habit of slowing himself down on purpose. Every year, whenever the sports festival came around, Hanabi would remind him to take it easy because she hated not being the center of attention. He was sure that if he ever stole the spotlight from her, she'd despise him for it. But now, Ichinos doesn't care about that anymore. He's tired of hiding in the background. He just wants to be normal like everyone else. So this time, he decides not to hold back. When it's his group's turn, they all line up at the starting position. As soon as the race begins, Ichinos starts running at full speed, and wow, this is way too easy. He doesn't have to check his surroundings or adjust his pace. He just runs. By the time he crosses the finish line, he turns around to see how everyone else is doing, and oh, the other three are way behind him. The entire class is in shock. Even the gym teacher looks like he just saw a ghost. Ichinos is fast, record-breakingly fast. It turns out his speed is enough to shatter the district record, and he's shocked to realize just how quick he actually is. His classmates are beyond hyped, immediately saying that with him on their team, victory in the relay race is practically guaranteed. If Ichinos, the guy who can casually break records, runs as the anchor, their class will be unstoppable. And let's be real, the stakes are high. The winning class gets unshackled dessert coupons from the cafeteria, which for a bunch of hungry students is basically a golden ticket. Everyone is ready to taste sweet victory, literally, but Ichinos is still in disbelief and tries to downplay it, thinking maybe his run was just a fluke. He's not even in a sports club, so it's not like he has trained for this. He apologizes, saying he might not be the best choice for anchor, which immediately sends his classmates into a panic. Some of them actually grab onto his legs, as if he's about to board a spaceship and never return. Seeing how desperate they are, Ichinos figures there's no point in refusing anymore. He agrees to be the anchor, but with a disclaimer. He can't guarantee a win. If they're fine with that, he'll do his best. The class erupts in cheers. They're way too excited about this. For the first time, Ichinos feels important. People genuinely want him on their team, and that feeling is kinda nice. They even joke that he's such a good guy that everyone is falling for him, and the girls can't stop gushing about how ridiculously cool he is. Fast runner, check. Decent guy, check. Good looking, double check. It's like he just stepped out of some sports anime, and they're all swooning over him. It's hilarious because just a few days ago he was basically a loner. Now he's surrounded by people, and Ichinos can't help but notice how much better his life has gotten since breaking up with Hanabi. It's almost comical how things turned around. Later, Yukishiro nudges him, pointing out how he's basically the center of attention again. She even asks if he's ever thought about becoming an athlete. Ichinos just shrugs, saying he never really saw a point to his speed outside of gym class. He tells her not to worry. Everyone will get bored of him soon enough. Yukishiro is caught off guard by how chill he is about it. She insists he's practically the school's hero right now, and even asks for running tips. Ichinos has no clue how to teach someone to be naturally fast, but before he can respond, Yukishiro suddenly states she wants to skip the sports festival altogether, leaving him shocked. He wishes he could help, but before he can say anything, Huki suddenly appears and asks Ichinose for a minute of his time. Ichinose recognizes Huki as the guy who set the second fastest record earlier, only for Kirigaya to casually crush it as if it were nothing. Curious, Ichinose wonders what Huki wants. Huki gets straight to the point, asking Ichinose if he plans to go all out in the relay race and aim for victory. Ichinose is caught off guard. He wasn't planning to push himself to the limit for this competition. However, Huki is dead serious. He admits he has been training for months to be the anchor, only for Ichinose to swoop in and take the spot effortlessly. At first, Ichinose thinks Huki wants him to step aside, but it turns out that's not the case. Huki accepts his loss, but insists that Ichinose must take this race seriously because Class B's anchor is Kirigaya. Cue the dramatic music. Ichinose immediately connects the dots. Kirigaya, the star athlete from the track club, the guy with the annoyingly perfect face, and the same guy he saw at the train station with Hanabi. Now it all makes sense. Ichinose asks Huki why he is so determined to beat Kirigaya, and with a bitter laugh, Huki admits that Kirigaya stole his girlfriend. Ichinose is astonished, and even Yukishiro, who has been listening quietly, looks shocked. Huki clarifies that he doesn't hate Kirigaya for it. He blames himself for being too weak to hold on to his relationship. What really ticks him off is how Kirigaya just dropped his ex for a first-year girl as if she meant nothing. That, Huki says, is something he can't forgive. Ichinosis finally understands. Huki ran into Kirigaya earlier that day and told him they were finalizing the relay team lineup. Kirigaya smirked and said he would be his team's anchor, adding with his usual cocky grin that just like he beat Huki in love, he would beat him in this race too. Huki is fuming and desperate for revenge. Ichinosis realized that if Kirigaya is as fast as everyone says, he needs to take this seriously. He considers for a moment and thinks that since it's so personal, maybe he should be the anchor. Seeing him agree makes Huki wildly excited, but Ichinosis reminds him that it only works if they actually win. Huki nods but then drops a bombshell. Kirigaya holds the current and district record. Ichinosis begins to doubt if he can pull this off, but Huki insists that he has the potential to beat Kirigaya with the right training. Ichinosis wonders if simply improving his own speed will be enough, considering it's a relay race that depends on the whole team. Huki confirms he has already compared their class times to Class B's. While performance can vary, it will ultimately come down to the battle between the anchors. Huki begs Ichinosis to train with him for the next 2 weeks. Seeing how serious he is, Ichinosis agrees, but on one condition. If Huki wants his help, he has to return the favor. Huki immediately asks what he wants, and Ichinosis smirks, saying he wants Huki to teach Yukishiro how to run. Yukishiro is completely caught off guard, but Huki nods. It's a deal. They agree to start training the next day, and just like that, Ichinosis has officially passed the responsibility of teaching Yukishiro onto Huki. The three of them are now on a mission to crush Kirigaya in the relay race. The next morning, Ichinosis meets up with Huki and Yukishiro for their first training session. It's the first time he's really hung out with classmates like this. Normally, Hanabi would be watching his every move, but now he feels liberated. As they warm up, Hanabi watches from a distance. Just as the group is about to begin, Huki, fired up, declares that they will take down Class B and put Kirigaya in his place. They decide to help Yukishiro win because Kirigaya, who is currently Hanabi's partner, stole Huki's girlfriend. Clearly still salty about it, Huki warns them that they need to be careful and tells everyone to warm up properly. During the warm-up, Ichinosis trips and falls. Yukishiro asks if he laughed at her, and he replies that she looked cute, which makes her blush. She then asks if he's a natural flirt, which completely confuses him. Meanwhile, Huki dramatically starts crying about how they dare flirt in front of someone whose love life has been completely destroyed. Ichinosis, trying to be helpful, drags Huki away while Yukishiro times her own run with a stopwatch. After finishing, she's completely out of breath. And Ichinosis thinks her training is going well, since her running times are improving. Still, he doesn't expect big results right away since they just started training. Then Yukishiro comes running back, panting heavily, and Ichinosis once again finds her adorable as she teases him, calling him a total charmer. However, he still doesn't get it. Meanwhile, Huki continues to cry dramatically about their flirting. Ichinosis calms him down, and their training continues every morning and night. Eventually, Hanabi appears during their train ride with none other than Kirigaya. Ichinosis thinks it must be a big deal for her to wake up an hour early, especially since she used to put so much effort into her appearance. Now, her hair is a mess. Suddenly, Hanabi steps away from Kirigaya and storms toward Ichinosis, yelling at him for avoiding her. Last time, she told him that a plan made by someone as dumb as him wouldn't work, but now she realizes she was wrong. Hanabi knew she would be face-to-face with Ichinosis every day, and Ichinosis told her she didn't have to wake up so early, at least not early enough to have a bad hair day. Panicking, Hanabi grabbed her hair and spun around to look at her reflection in the mirror Kirigaya was holding. Ichinosis realized she hadn't even noticed her messy hair until now. Quickly regaining her composure, Hanabi mentioned that she heard Ichinosis would be the anchor for the race. Ichinosis was taken aback, exclaiming, "Wait, what?" She then yelled at him to take things more seriously. After a moment, she dramatically pointed at him and proclaimed an ultimatum. Since he ignored her and kept running despite her telling him to stop, she vowed to humiliate him for it. She bragged that Kirigaya was the anchor for Class B, claiming he was going to do his best. With a confident smile, she taunted Ichinosis to get ready to eat her dust, and then she said goodbye, telling him he could do whatever he wanted to try to fight back. The two of them left, practically sparking with rivalry. Ichinosis sighed in relief and continued training with his team in the mornings, after school, and even on their days off. They trained as much as possible. After a long day of practice, Hasawei finally called it a day, praising everyone for their effort. Exhausted, Kiro flopped onto the ground, completely spent. The three of them sat together, realizing that tomorrow was the big day. Hasi reassured them, stating that their times had improved significantly and he was confident they would do great at the festival. Even though the race wasn't a direct showdown, Hasi insisted they were going to crush Kirigaya. Ichinose had shown talent since day one, training non-stop for 2 whole weeks. He thanked Hasi for the kind words and commented that he wished they had more time to train. Hui, feeling emotional, suddenly burst into tears. A classic Hui moment, and thanked both of them, saying he truly meant it. He admitted that he couldn't sleep because of Kirigaya, his ex-significant other, who still haunted his thoughts. However, since they started training, the only thing on his mind had been improving his running time, which surprisingly helped him get some real sleep. He thanked them again. Yukishiro, catching the sentimental mood, said she was the one who should be grateful because, thanks to them, she had improved a lot in running. She smiled and expressed her gratitude, saying she appreciated the time they had spent together as real teammates. For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence. Then Ichinose admitted that spending time with them had been much more enjoyable than he expected. Hui, however, made it clear that his hatred for Kirigaya was still very much alive. Yukiro remarked that she initially thought she was mistaken, but Kirigaya had changed. He looked fresher, almost like Ichinose, which surprised her. She quickly clarified that it was just the hair, everything else was completely different. Hui then mentioned that Kirigaya had to cut his hair when he started dating someone new, and his ex actually dumped him because she preferred his hair. He felt like an idiot for thinking Kirigaya might have chopped his hair just to spite him. Hugging Ichinose, Hui told him to laugh all he wanted, but Ichinose simply replied that no one had the right to mock someone who loved with all their heart. Hearing this, Hui broke down, calling Ichinose a good guy. These were the first friends he, the main character, had made. Later, Yukishiro praised Ichinose, and when he asked why, she listed all the moments that showed his kindness. Moving closer with a bright smile, she declared that this side of him was wonderful. She happily stepped closer, declaring that she found that side of him amazing. The sudden closeness made them both blush. Apologizing, she repeated that getting to know him made her realize how wonderful he was, and that thought made her happy. They both turned red as Ichinose admitted his embarrassment. Yukira, feeling the same, insisted she just wanted to express her feelings. Flustered again, they quickly wrapped up the conversation, agreeing they needed to give it their all the next day. She waved goodbye and headed off on her own, and Ichinose did the same. Later that night, lying in bed, Ichinose remembered what Yukishiro and Hui told him earlier and how much time he had spent with them. He realized he couldn't thank them enough. For the first time, he experienced something completely new. He couldn't sleep because his mind was racing, but not about running. He sat up in bed, thinking, so this is what that feels like. The next morning, the whole team was pumped and determined to win. Finally, the day of the sports festival arrived. Ichinose remembered his friend's words from before and reflected on the time they spent together, feeling grateful all over again. The festival kicked off with a tug-of-war competition, with Hui leading the charge, followed by a tire-carrying race, and then a ball-throwing event led by Ryo. The crowd cheered loudly, hyping up the competitors. Ichinose realized his event, the jump rope competition, was coming up soon, so he headed over. That's when he saw Hanabi in a full cheerleader uniform. Kirigaya, acting overly cutesy, called Hanabi by her nickname, saying in a sugary voice that he couldn't wait for the cheerleading performances. He even complimented her, saying she looked absolutely adorable. Suddenly he felt confident that he could win anything. His teammate felt the energy and agreed. Hanabi, playing up her cuteness, asked him to win first place for her. Kirigaya stepped in confidently, declaring that of course he would win. There was no way he was losing. Hanabi smiled and cheered for them, saying she hoped they wouldn't lose in the relay race. As the main event was about to begin, the announcer called for the first runners to take their positions. Huki stepped up, determined, and told the team that he was going to sprint as fast as possible in the first stage, before passing the baton off to them. Yukishiro gave some last-minute encouragement to Hasi and Ichinose, telling them to give it their all. The race began, and Huki took off running as if his life depended on it. Yukishiro cheered loudly as each runner gave their best effort, passing the baton down the line. As it was almost Ichinose's turn, she started to panic. Quickly, Ichinose told her to stay calm and just do what they practiced. Out of nowhere, she turned to him and asked him to hold her hand for a second. Without hesitation, he reached out and she clasped his hands tightly. After taking a deep breath, she smiled and said that now she felt like she could do this. She thanked him, stepped into position, and prepared for her moment to shine. When the baton reached her hand, she took off running. Hasi yelled at her to remember the training while Ichinose cheered her on. She pushed herself to the limit, running as fast as she could while keeping a steady pace. The other runners were starting to fall behind. She passed the baton to the next teammate and stumbled toward Ichinose, still out of breath. Ichinose smiled and told her, "You killed it out there!" "That was amazing!" Yukishiro, still catching her breath, said she heard him cheering for her even from far away. She thought it was incredible that he was shouting so loudly just to support her. It felt like some kind of miracle. With a determined grin, she proclaimed that she would be cheering for him with everything she had. Ichinose glanced at Huki, who had started the race strong, at his teammates who passed the baton down the line, and at Yukishiro, who gave it her all. He suddenly felt the weight of his position as the anchor. He needed to deliver a great result for them. As Ichinose watched the race unfold, he noticed that Clasby had taken a massive lead while his own class was struggling to hold on to second place. His opponent seemed confident, and one of Kirigaya's teammates sneered with amusement, questioning why someone like Ichinose was chosen as the anchor. He even mocked Huki, pointing out how his performance had declined ever since his breakup. Meanwhile, Kirigaya's team moved seamlessly, passing the baton effortlessly. He took off with a smirk, accelerating like a rocket. Ichinose watched in frustration as his team fell to third place. By the time the second place team's anchor started running, Kirigaya was already halfway through the track. Finally, Ichinose's teammate rushed in, passing him the baton. His moment had arrived. With every ounce of strength, he launched himself forward. All the hours of training and relentless effort had led to this. Keeping Yukishiro's advice in mind, he steadied his breathing and focused on pushing forward. Within seconds, he overtook the second-place runner, closing the gap. But just catching up wasn't enough. He had to win. Up ahead, Kirigaya remained in the lead, but Ichinose was closing in fast. The sudden shift in pace sent a ripple of shock through the crowd. Gasps filled the air, and all eyes locked onto the track. Kirigaya finally noticed the attention and turned around, only to find Ichinose right behind him. Panic set in. Before Kirigaya could react, Ichinose surged past him, taking the lead with ease. The crowd erupted into cheers, and his teammates rushed to the finish line in pure exhilaration. Meanwhile, Kirigaya was left trailing behind, seething with frustration. Dazed by the overwhelming excitement, he barely had time to process the moment. Among the chaos, he caught sight of Yukishiro beaming with pride, and Huki wiping away tears of joy. For the first time, he truly felt it. This is what happiness looks like. Huki, still emotional, threw himself at Ichinose in a hug, and the rest of the team gathered around, reveling in their victory. At a distance, Hanabi quietly sipped from her water bottle, her expression unreadable. As the celebration continued and the cheers grew louder, the entire class lifted their triumphant anchor into the air once more. At that moment, a girl commented that the runner from the other class was actually part of the track club yet had still lost. She scoffed, saying that just having a good-looking face wasn't enough and that he deserved to lose because of his arrogant attitude. The protagonist listened, noting how annoyed she sounded. It was pretty obvious why she was his girlfriend, but he didn't think she was upset just to defend her significant other. He went for his friend rather than trying to get back at Hanabi. After the race, his friend casually mentioned that they were all meeting up for karaoke later. Our protagonist assumed that it was a class gathering and realized he had never actually been to one before. Deep down, he hoped someone would say, "Hey, let's meet up." But instead, his friend insisted that the party wouldn't be complete without the guest of honor. Him. As he considered going, he suddenly spotted Hanabi walking with another guy. Instinctively, he and Yukishiro ducked behind cover, not wanting to run into her right after defeating her team in the relay race. It would feel way too awkward to interact with her now. Meanwhile, a conversation unfolded between Hanabi and the track club guy. He complained that he wasn't feeling his best today, that his body felt heavy, and that was why he couldn't perform at his peak. However, he was confident he would shine in the inter-school competitions. Hanabi raised an eyebrow at his excuse, clearly unimpressed. She questioned what he meant by next time, and was honestly shocked by his audacity. Without hesitation, she reminded him that whatever they had, if anything, was over. The guy looked genuinely confused, as if this was news to him. He seemed to believe they were actually dating. When she scoffed at him, he brought up how she always wanted to walk to school with him and would hold onto his arm, as if that somehow proved his point. Rolling her eyes, Hanabi shut him down instantly. She told him he was clueless, probably too muscle-brained to think straight, and made it clear he was never her significant other. Then almost casually she mentioned there was only one person she would actually consider dating. Curious, he asked who it was, but she waved him off, telling him it was none of his business. Desperate to salvage whatever he thought they had, he pleaded for another chance, even admitting that he broke up with his last girlfriend for her. He even went as far as changing his hairstyle to match her preferences. Hanabi wasn't having any of it. She actually laughed, pointing out how typical it was for him to assume everything was his choice when he never even asked what she wanted in the first place. She didn't just call him worthless, she also made it clear he was being overly dramatic, turning this into an unnecessary scene. At this point, her patience was gone. She told him to back off, flatly stating that she didn't need him anymore and didn't want him around. With a sharp, sarcastic tone, she thanked him for absolutely nothing. The guy stammered, trying to get her to stop, but she cut him off completely, telling him to disappear. As she turned to leave, she suddenly noticed our protagonist hiding nearby with Yukishiro. Their eyes met, and her expression shifted instantly. Without missing a beat, she walked over and demanded to know what he was doing there. She assumed he must have come just to watch her humiliation, mocking the idea that this was the end of anything. In her mind, everything that just happened was still that worthless guy's fault. She glared at the protagonist, convinced that one day he would regret letting her go. But instead of reacting to her anger, he stayed calm, refusing to get caught up in her drama. Hanabi smirked, warning him that giving up so easily meant he wouldn't have to deal with her anymore, but he'd better be ready for her revenge. With that, she turned and walked away. After she was gone, the protagonist turned to Yukishiro and apologized for making her witness such a weird conversation. She brushed it off, saying it wasn't a big deal, then asked if he was okay. While she admitted it was a little uncomfortable, she appreciated that he checked in on her. Later that evening, our protagonist joined his friends at karaoke. The energy was high, and everyone was buzzing about the events of the day. One of them brought up how amazing the race was, praising everyone's performance, especially that of the protagonist. The whole group cheered for him, calling him the MVP of the day. The conversation quickly shifted to how unbelievable his performance was, how he managed to push past his limits, and just thinking about it made their hearts race all over again. Without a doubt, they agreed he was the highlight of the day, as always. The protagonist remained humble, insisting there was no need to thank him since it was really the entire class's effort that led to their victory. His words caught everyone off guard, and they were genuinely moved by his attitude. A close friend pointed out that most of the class showed up to the karaoke gathering, which wasn't always the case. The protagonist, still getting to know some of them, noticed that the class representatives seemed to be the type who made sure no one felt left out. At one point, he ended up talking with Yukishiro about a beautiful song that was playing. He agreed that the lyrics were really touching. Just then, Hasegawa enthusiastically started singing, dedicating the song to the protagonist as a symbol of their friendship. Hasegawa took a moment to open up, admitting that everyone already knew his ex had left him for someone else. However, instead of letting it break him, he saw Eos as the one who helped him get back at that undeserving thief, and he was grateful for that. The other classmates were caught off guard upon realizing that not only did the protagonist win the race, but he also helped a friend through a difficult situation. As he explains his reasons for agreeing to help, the group is even more impressed by his kindness toward her. It's not just his talent that stands out. His humility and sincerity make him even more admirable. They begin to see him as someone with an effortless charm that seems almost unreal, and how naturally likable he is. Yukishiro chimes in, telling him he's incredible, a true hero. It's no surprise that everyone looks up to him. Even she can't help but admire him. She confesses she had an amazing day and admits that when she saw him run, she unconsciously followed his gaze, which made her chest tighten in a way that almost hurt. Ikno finds himself lost in thought, trying to process the strange feeling he's experiencing. At that moment, he realizes he doesn't completely understand it. The two fall into a comfortable silence, simply enjoying the music and watching their classmates sing and have fun. As he takes in the lively atmosphere, he feels genuinely happy. After a while, he decides to step outside for a bit to clear his head. Outside, he overhears a group of girls from his class chatting. Their conversation quickly turns mean-spirited as they begin gossiping about Manaji-san. Their tone drips with annoyance as they complain that she won't stop hanging around Shin. One of them goes further, making a cruel comparison and saying she acts like an attention-seeking dog in heat. Erika agrees, scoffing at how Manaji clearly thinks she's more popular than she is, when in reality, most people find her annoying. Ikno listens, his expression hardening as he realizes they're talking about someone from their own class. It then clicks in his mind. He remembers how Yukishiro had started talking to him, but he assumes she's not actually trying to get closer to him. Meanwhile, the group of girls continues bad-mouthing Manaji, calling them all pigs, yet they seem fine with Yukishiro being adored. One of them even says that only 2D fictional men are acceptable, and that real guys need to try harder. Although Echino isn't particularly close to Yukishiro, it still bothers him that they're talking behind her back. Back in the karaoke room, he finds Minaguchi-san singing while the rest of the group wraps up their night. Someone comments that it was fun to have the whole class together for the first time and suggests doing it again. The guys then decide that the next gathering should be just for them, and Echino agrees. As he steps outside, he feels a strange sensation, almost as if he saw a shadow moving. He brushes it off, thinking that it's just his imagination or maybe a stray cat. The girl with glasses asks if she can walk with him part of the way home. Without hesitation, he agrees, saying he wants to make sure she gets home safely since it's already late, and he doesn't want to leave a girl walking alone at night. She playfully questions why he always says such sweet things so effortlessly, joking that her heart can't handle it. Her face turns slightly red as their classmates wave goodbye off to the side. Meanwhile, Hanabi watches the scene unfold, thinking to herself that Senpai belongs to her. She doesn't want anyone else to discover his charm. If he keeps acting this way, he's bound to become the target of every girl around. Hanabi smirks to herself, deciding that she needs to take something back from all these guys. Her sinister laugh suggests that she's already planning something to put an end to his fun. The next day at school, everything seems normal at first. Students greet each other and chat as usual. But suddenly, an unsettling silence takes over the room. Their teacher steps forward with a serious expression, announcing that the class has received a letter accusing them of bullying. She looks disappointed as she explains that a student has been struggling so much that they no longer want to come to school. Ikno realizes that the only person he really talks to is Yukishiro, who sits next to him along with the more popular guys in class. He barely interacts with most of his classmates, and he doesn't know much about the girl in question. Then he notices an empty seat. It must belong to Erika, who had been complaining in the hallway. He recalls how harsh her words were that night. Given what she's been through, maybe her reaction makes more sense. At the time, it was hard to see things from her perspective. The teacher asks the guilty party to come forward, but no one speaks up. Ikno assumes no one wants to admit it. The whole situation feels like a mystery scene, and their teacher seems fresh out of training, perhaps even a little unsure of how to handle this. Silence lingers in the classroom. No one wants to be the first to move. The teacher continues explaining that in some schools, bad teachers just label someone as a bully and call it a day. But that's not how things are done here. However, she warns them that if the bullying situation isn't resolved, their much-anticipated school trip might get cancelled. A wave of unease spreads through the room. No one can believe something as big as the trip could be at risk. But in the end, no one confesses. 5 days pass, and then another letter arrives at the school. This time, the teacher reads it aloud, revealing a name. She pauses, expecting the student to step forward. When no one does, she states that if they won't confess, she'll reveal the name herself. She calls out Yukishiro and asks her to follow her to the student guidance office. The teacher mentions the name in the letter and explains that they will need to discuss the situation with the academic coordinator. Ichin notices the sadness on her face and recognizes the disappointment in his expression as well. Holding back tears, she leads him out of the classroom and he watches her from a distance. Accusations then start flying, and Yukishiro is blamed for harassing another girl. This sparks a heated discussion in class about whether she actually did it. Some students say she was close to Didio Ai, while others claim they never saw them together. Many insist that she was always quiet, lost in her books, while Didoi spent time chatting about anime with the otaku group. To them, it didn't seem like the two had any real connection. Ichin's training partner approaches and asks if he knows anything about what's going on. He admits that the whole situation feels strange, almost like a classic case of school bullying. He points out that if the teacher hadn't stepped in, the students might not have even noticed something was wrong. He then considers the possibility that the accusations could be true, which shocks the others. However, he also finds the letter suspicious. The athlete from the track club wonders if it could be a lie, and he admits he isn't sure. As they discuss the situation, Yukishiro enters the classroom looking visibly upset. She quietly takes her seat, glancing toward Ichin, who is lost in thought. She slips him a note insisting that she didn't harass anyone and asking him to believe her. Their eyes meet, and he reassures her, letting her know that he trusts her. Tears well up in Yukishiro's eyes, and seeing how heartbroken she is, he resolves to get to the bottom of this. Later, the three of them gather to talk, realizing that the situation is only getting more complicated. During their last class of the day, the teacher informs everyone that Yukishiro has denied all the accusations against her, claiming she did nothing wrong. Despite this, the classroom remains tense. The teacher then reminds them that a letter was sent to the school specifically accusing Yukishiro of harassment. The students are instructed to write down their thoughts on a piece of paper, and are warned that if the issue isn't resolved, the school trip will be cancelled. As everyone processes this, the teacher instructs them to work together to find a solution. Ichinos realize that things are spiraling out of control. Unfortunately, they can't rely on the teacher to fix this. If they want answers, they'll have to figure it out themselves. Hasi mutters that the teachers are worthless and only seem good at throwing accusations around. Yukishiro apologizes to the two of them, but Ichin reassures her that none of this is her fault. He adds that if they go over all the information carefully, they might be able to solve this. He knows it's a tough situation for her, but that's exactly why they need to stick together. Yukishiro thanks him, and he wishes he could do more to ease her worries.